buttoned that up.
I'm very relaxed, as you can tell. I've been stretching.
Let's do it. I just had cortisol straight through my fucking brain. It's all right. No. So, hey, welcome to the ISS podcast, Harry. You've got a story that needs to be told, and it is I've been listening to your book, mate. I normally I can put audiobooks on in the background and work, but I couldn't. The 11 Bads, I have to sit and actually listen to it, mate. So, and a lot of the guys have been reading it, watching it, and they say you have to fucking watch this book, mate. Read it, look at it, just get it in your head. So,
I appreciate it. I've had some sleepless nights, I can tell you, putting it out, and particularly in the current environment. I couldn't have picked it worse, really.
What is it like? I mean, before we get into the book, I suppose I want to talk about your story and introduce you to the guests. You could probably do a 12-part miniseries on Harry Moffit and the life you've had. So,
mate, I think I tell a story that will resonate with a lot of my peers and colleagues. You know, they've spent a long time away and done all of the things and had the experiences that I've had, and some of the great men and women I've shared that with over the time. So I look, you know, if it's an insight that resonates across, you know, all of those people, then that's great. But look, I get that it's intriguing and of interest, but there are a lot of people who've travelled the same journey.
And it's going to be a story that is worth listening to as well. Like, but because so who is Harry Moffit and why do we want you on the podcast? That's the question.
Well,
mate.
I can hear my wife saying Harry Moffit's a dickhead, but no, look, mate, I had it's unremarkable, really, upbringing. You know, middle lower class family. Didn't really know whether we were poor or rich. Didn't really care. Loved school, probably more sport and hanging out with everyone. I grew up in Melbourne, proud Victorian, and my old man was in the Navy. Mum was a nurse, so grew up around a life of service. So I guess I was kind of destined. And yeah, unremarkable, really warm, loving childhood. You know, pretty boring, and probably punctuated by sport and later on girls and a few beers here and there. So, and it really wasn't. You know, I suppose the journey question you're asking is that, you know, where does the SAS or the special ops or military thing come from? And in 1980, way before you guys were born, probably, the 22 SAS, the British SAS, were called in to resolve an Iranian embassy hostage siege in London. And back then we had a black and white telly. It was sit on the packing box in the corner of the room. And these black-clad, gas-masked individuals burst onto the screen, blowing things up and roping off the roof and smashing through windows. And it was same was on the front page of the newspaper. And that was the origin point for me. I saw this. Up until then, I wanted to scream out a full forward for Hawthorn and play AFL or open the batting for Australia. But once I saw that, I was just welded onto my brain. And I don't know that I had a sense that that was all I was going to do, but certainly it loomed large, and I had a feeling. So, you know, that set about a chain of events that led me to the military and then attempting SAS selection. That's kind of the background, I guess. And I always say when I'm talking about that part of my life, and I imagine a lot of us have this experience. It turned me to a few things. One, to my physical self. I really started to tune in and say, okay, what's going on and what physical preparation do I need to do at 15 and 16? And I guess a lot of my peers around me at school weren't turning their minds to, you know, what it means to be a physical and a psychological person, or have that part of you, or understand that part of you. And the other thing it did for me, it set me, it kind of, it inspired me to read. I started reading books on special forces and the military and history and David Sterling and the commandos in World War II, the independent companies, and infantry. I became absolutely fascinated with infantry, all things Australian infantry, and that was that was it. I suppose that's the background, Anthony, and unremarkable really, because I'm sure it resonates with a lot of people.
On that, just quickly, like it does resonate with a lot of people. Did you find that a lot of the guys that were in Perth with you when you're in the regiment had the same kind of motivation, the same driver to get there to begin with?
Yeah, some of them do. It was pretty depending. Might not have been 22 SAS, but it might have been the Phantoms of the Jungle in Australia, or World War One and World War Two. Very big infantry and frontline kind of influence. I've spoken to other guys who just kind of meandered into it. They said, I didn't know what else to do. Just kind of wandering around doing nothing, making a nuisance of myself, drinking too much or whatever, dropping out of school. And the military resonated with them because I think that the call to discipline, it kind of gives you a structure, and it's a brilliant structure. I love it. I'd do it all again, and I'd encourage anyone, if they are a bit lost in a bit of a liminal space in life when they're young, to go and spend a few years. It gives you so many great skills. But, they're all varied, I think. One thing I loved about the regiment, even back then when it was heavily, infantry and army focused, we got a lot broader kind of net is cast these days for backgrounds. But, it was a very eclectic bunch of individuals. They were kind of all a bit weird and strange in our own way. So I really liked that, because up until then I knew I was a bit weird and strange, and then it was nice to find some common folk.
Because they say that you have to have a perfectionist psychological mindset as one of the key markers for a SAS soldier is that you've got an expedient personalities and you have perfectionist personalities, and they say that. Well, I mean, that's what the psych told me when she was trying to stop me when I was trying to go for selection. So you got an expedient personality, you're not. I'm like, well, I did it last year and they fucking make it, so let me go this year. So, but yeah,
I think
is that where it comes from? That very, because it used to be in Vietnam and stuff. It was very ordinary sort of individuals, and you were nominated from your unit to go, weren't you? As opposed to.
I think so. Yeah, I think there was a more ad hoc, organic approach to it. And yes, I when you think about the 22 SAS back in North Africa, they were the kind of trash, the guys that couldn't be, they were just expedient individuals that I guess at that time the military said, well, what else do we do with these rat bags? Let's send them off, because the SAS were a complete disaster to start with. They lost more blokes than they recruited, and they were bloody beer swilling, thieves and renegades. And so, look, I think to go to your point, Anthony, I think it's a valid point, and I would take it a step further and say that super intrinsically driven, and I still feel that today. And it actually goes to one of the great challenges I had at the end of my time in the regiment when we were rebuilding the human performance program and trying to understand a bit more about how we can prepare, maintain, and transition the operators better. You're in no danger of motivating the train to work psychologically and mentally, to work on their social skills, leadership skills, on their planning. And so, I mean, the problem is holding them back from that, and actually telling them, settle down, bugger off, go and join a football club or crochet, whatever you want to do, have an outside, go and lay down for a day, go and do nothing. And so you're right, that intrinsic competitiveness is a virtue, but I think I came to the realization, and I believe this now, with the new guys coming through, we need to train them just to chill out. You guys know as well as anyone, I've been reading off the website and some of your posts and whatnot, and a lot of what you talk about goes to this remaining switched on, this hypervigilance where. And there's a little bits of, you feel shame if you don't feel like that. You feel lazy and you've just got to work hard to get over that. And I think that's something we could probably do further upstream with all military servers is, just tune out, switch off. And it's hard, but practice, we perfect what we practice,
Was there much resistance? Because you were one of the key figures in establishing, like you spoke about, the Human Performance Centre over in Perth. Was there much resistance to doing, or was there a need? People saw a need, like we need to.
Oh no, there was huge resistance, and I was a bit of a pariah. There was a few of us around at the time. Mate, the last thing a burly big fella wants to hear is that he's training wrong, or that the push-ups and chin-ups he's been doing forever were bad for his shoulders and neck, and or telling someone that you need to train every other day, not every day, because there's this thing called recovery that we haven't kind of worked out yet. And so it was really quite difficult. And I think I overreached initially because I wanted to introduce, the biopsychosocial model of performance, as I call it, or health. I wanted to kind of hit all of those pillars at the same time, and also brought in a kind of philosophical pillar too. I think that's been lost in soldiering, how to think and why. Because killing and combat is just such a profoundly, messy and confusing and morally challenging, but it's also a hugely philosophical or cognitive thing. It's very hard to kind of pin down. And so that was the fourth pillar we introduced, and I think it was just maybe a bit too much. We had sleeping room, napping stations going. We had monitors on guys tracking sleep. This is nearly 10 years ago now. We were challenging the way we were doing selection. We were trying to change. There's a couple of guys who were trying to change the way instructors spoke and the way we selected. So we were kind of challenging a bit of the trend, the traditions and norms. So there was a bit of resistance, but. Danny Cooper, I spoke to him last week. We do a little bit of work on the side together. He probably had the biggest success because he was in the gym, and that's where you really make friends and influence people, I think, in those populations, as you well know.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, there's great crossover in everything you're saying there, and what we're trying to do with like regular Army general, like population veterans. And we found like a lot of what we don't want to be caught up in people thinking we're just a fitness organisation, but unfortunately you've got to meet the market halfway, and everybody that wants to change their life, be it mental or physical health, always start in the gym. So that's where you've got to go.
Yep.
Going back to the headspace and the mindset stuff, like we've thrown these ideas around in the past, going that the current model, Western militaries base their model on the American cowboy, and that is chew bubblegum, don't fuck with us, we're the biggest, baddest dudes on the planet, where the cowboy never has, nowhere in the cowboy model is there an off switch or a downtime, rest, relax. Whereas the Eastern model of like the samurai or the ninja is very much, I am at peace always until I have to kill you. Is that something you think will ever be taken on board by Western armies?
I'd like to think so. I think we've got a lot to learn from Eastern philosophies and others, natural and native philosophies. A lot of the original thinkers, were founded in a lot of that Eastern methodologies or philosophical kind of approaches and schools. I don't know. It's currently. I think that's the biggest challenge: is not only finding something that soldiers, sailors, airmen and women can gravitate to, and is mindfulness and meditation. It's kind of it hits somewhat hits the mark for most people, but there's certainly a challenge there to find something that people can grasp onto and use as a downtime. So it's simply a matter of powering down regularly. And what is powering down? It just means that if you're at a high vigilance or high activity, high stress all the time, or high arousal all the time, as you've already hit on it, Anthony. You mentioned it. I think your brain and you're swimming in cortisol and epinephrine and or adrenaline, those types of, and they're motivating. We call them bad or stress hormones, but they're not. they're motivating hormones. And what they do is they get us out of bed every morning. They drive us forward towards goals. That's why goal setting is so important, because you've got something to aim for. And every time you think of aiming for something, you're kind of promoting those chemicals and hormones that drive you forward to action. And they're very good, obviously, in fight or flight. Everybody's really familiar with that now. But the problem is they're only made for short duration, and so they need to be reset. And when you power down, your body hopefully releases the buffering hormones and chemicals, which we too often regard as good good hormones. And it's the language is wrong, good and bad, because they're not good or bad. Your body just blindly does what, well, not blindly, just does what it does. And so that powering down is I personally, I'm a sauna guy. I'm still kind of going 100 miles an hour, but I'm much better than I used to be. And I use things like sauna. I train, but I almost train to recover, not recover to train. And that's probably one thing I wish I had have done earlier in my career. And also nap. I started napping maybe around the time we set up the performance program. I was doing some research on it, and I find that just resets everything. It feels so good after that, or it keeps the anxiety or the this drive forward at bay a little. So it's a conversation that I find myself having more and more. I work with a special ops group here in Melbourne, the Coppers, and they're doing some great things there. And it's a really handy conversation to put it in those. I think to put it in that context.
Yeah, well, they're starting to do that in the combat shooting stuff. They're teaching in regular infantry units. They're adding the sleep when into the actual range days. Everyone just after lunch, go and sleep, go and have a nap, which is opposite to what we used to get. Like, do not fucking lay down, do not sleep, and now they're making people lie down and sleep. And you see some of the old RSMs, they are fucking having kittens about it. So.
Yeah. And well, look, this is it, isn't it? That is spot on. The old guard, and look, bless their hearts, because they're probably doing it better than, they probably used to get punched in the head, if you didn't. I remember I did my CQB course, and I won't name the guy because he was a bit of a dickhead on the CQB course. We're mates now, but he was screaming, if you can't get 20 and 10 on this round, then you're going to be doing chin-ups until you pass. And when you put your arms up, you're shaking from the chin-ups. I've only got bloody small caliber, and he's bloody, so how do you pass? And so the mentality was, I guess when I grew up playing footy too, you got a torn hammy, run it out. and it's hey?
Jog it off.
Yeah. Chop it off. So, and look, it goes to a question that, what are we doing now that is the equivalent? What am I saying now that in 10 years' time will be completely redundant? And I'll say, who was that Moffit bloke? It's kind of the guy who inspired me was a guy by the name of Percy Cerity. He invented the old Stoughton philosophy. And there's a book called Why Die? And I bloody rate it. It's a bit of a, I don't know, it's a bit of a kind of biography book, but he's one of the few people that was like decades before his time. He was espousing eating well, eating vegetables and eating salads, and when they were drinking beer and bananas. He was espousing weights for athletes before it was a thing. Philosophy, reading. Who would have thought? Athletes should read. It brings structure to their thinking, and this was all. He was a complete pariah in those days. So, I always try and cut myself. Try and remind myself that maybe some of the things we're promoting today will become redundant. So you've got to keep that open mind and that lifelong learning all the time,
and continually learn and evolve. That's what we're also worried about here. So we're like, we're the contemporary veteran. Some people don't like it, or the young veteran, whatever. What happens in 10 years' time when what we're preaching, and they're like, no, you guys are already fucking 40s. Keegan's going to be the next, head of the. What happens then? They're like, what the fuck were they talking about? And then
you guys will live forever. Don't worry about that.
Because you've got
to keep that message up, because I think that open-mindedness and that search for learning, that is what I'm talking about with the philosophical part of human performance, as I like to say. And I know that some people don't that doesn't resonate with people, but that's what it is. It's the eternal search for wisdom, and it might sound fluffy, but it's just fucking true. And I think if you don't pursue that and look for further learning and expand and work on your philosophical self, you end up like that RSM telling blokes to stand up on gun pickets or we're not on gun pickets, on range days, etc.
Yeah, because I mean, if you go from the royalty back in fucking the Middle Ages, they were dying of gout because of you eat meat and you drink, and that's fine, that's healthy, and then the royalty is dying in the droves from gout and fucking malnutrition. But yeah, I think that constant drive to move forward and find new information is so important, and something that I think the younger boys are starting to see that as well. They're always learning and trying to read,
I agree. Yeah, I agree. And and if I can, clumsily say, your generation that are coming through now, I reckon smarter than some of the instructors in that regard. And and I think that's brilliant. And it's difficult for them to kind of pipe up in those situations, but that's where we've got to put a lot more work, I guess, into the instructors and the old guard, and keep working.
Yeah, the instructor credibility is something that's always getting the right people in the right places. I mean, obviously the SAS is something that is held in absolute. I mean, that's the pinnacle of an army career is the young boys in the battalions, because they get into the army and they're like, this is kind of not what I thought it was. What's the next step? How do I actually be a soldier? They see the SAS as actual soldiering. If you want to go and actually soldier now, that's where you have to go.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah, and it's a pity because we missed the boat at the start of Afghan 2, which was 2005, by not sending in a battalion or two onto the ground before anyone else came, and with or just after us. I think that would have been a much better decision. I don't think anyone would disagree with that, because it was, at the time, we were going, what the fuck were they sending the, and it kind of set the tone. The strategy became more about doing what we thought we needed to do to be seen to be doing something, rather than reacting to the strategic situation or the tactical situation on the ground, which was get out there, seize the ground, hold it, start the hearts and minds stuff that Australian infantry are absolutely renowned for, alongside, in parallel with their fighting ability, but we just somehow, I don't know.
Was it risk averse? Were they? Because I mean, you always hear stories where they're like, what is the lowest threshold for risk? How about let's get the SAS to do it all because they're the highest trained. They're not going to die, as opposed to sending 17-year-old Bob in. And
I think there's a danger of looking at it that too simplistically. I think that's part of it, definitely, or not definitely. I suspect that's part of it. A couple of SAS guys die. Oh yeah, fair enough. That's just what they do. A couple of young infantry. I probably find it hard to imagine that discussion. Don't know, but my thoughts on it is that we were. Our hierarchy was probably quite inexperienced in a way too, and the advice around that was in and around the government that stage may have been, I don't know, less than inspired. It's hard to know, because Tarankout was supposed to be, my understanding was, supposed to be a nice, quiet place for Australia to go and park, and it was the crossroads of the Taliban highway, and sure, there wasn't any fighting going on there, but there was hundreds of fighters passing through there all the time. So it's just difficult. I think right now, particularly with everything going on with the report being released, it's probably not the time to be unpacking and unpicking everything. I think there's a lot of emotion around at the moment, a lot of anger and shame, and a lot of frustration and all this high charged emotion. Maybe I'm going to wait for Christmas to pass, have a bit of downtime, and then I think some measured heads, and we can pick it apart. But I think we need to be constructive, and sometimes it feels a little as if we're looking for blame and we're looking for places and people to be outraged at. And I've never been convinced that that's the best way forward, and I think we've just got to learn, and learn some lessons and move on.
So, because I mean, you see it all in the news at the moment, and I'm getting sick of hearing opinions from people who weren't in the regiment, that aren't named in the report. They just jump on as a mouthpiece to grandstand their own career. And I'm actually interested to hear the perspective of an actual SAS soldier from the regiment, from the time period, on what the Brereton report and what it actually means to you, and what's your take on it?
Yeah, well, devastating. One word, this whole episode, the whole period, it's devastating. And this is completely suspending any guilt, blame, allegations, right or wrong. I think that part gives me the shits a bit, because I feel like everyone and everything are being tried in the press and on social media at the moment. I think that's rubbish. I think the media should have its time. As much as it pisses me off to hear ill-informed journalists and others talking, although some of it's quite accurate. But I've always thought a free press is important, and it's one of the things we fight for, or it represents one of the things I certainly served and fought for. But I would have thought now, it's been devastating for the unit and for the SOCOM community and for the ADF. I hope it's not catastrophic. I trust it won't be, because I think there's just such a fantastic body of work from the unit and SOCOM that hopefully holds the brand up and holds the reputation up through all of this. And I think it will. I think we'll survive. But as long as everybody who's involved gets their opportunity to represent themselves appropriately, and I mean on all sides, as long as they get to that opportunity, I'd kind of take pause and remind everyone that the unit's a bloody amazing place. It's a bit crazy, and it runs at a gazillion miles an hour, but it's chock full of brilliant men and women from our ADF, and the ADF's chock full of brilliant men and women. Some of the pound for pound the best army on the planet, or best military on the planet. But inside the regiment, I'm really proud of the unit. All through this time's continue to give service overseas. We've been fighting ISIS, not to mention in Afghanistan, not to mention in Africa and all other places. Representing Australia, and I'm really proud. And the brilliant work the unit's been doing globally. So I just hope we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, to use a pretty average cliche. And the other thing I'd say is, I reckon that. This will sound a little bit kind of all about us, but it's probably one of the hardest working organisations in Australia. The breakneck speed and volume of work that we've been sustained for the last 20 years, the Brereton report means, unfortunately, that we're going to have to work even harder for the next 10 or 20 years, however long it's going to take to earn back the trust and the confidence of the Australian people. I think. That's just a fact. So we'll see, mate, with time. I think what I do think, going back to your point about the social media and a lot of people who are venting, I would say, because it's all quite angry, the commentary. I would have thought, and I'm certainly, just releasing the fucking book at the worst possible time. We've made a conscious decision to stop the press on the book. I kind of feel right now that as a community we should be partaking of some silent contemplation, some reflection as a community, and just pondering for a period how the fuck we got here, regardless of any guilt, or if anyone's not guilty or guilty, that will come. But we're here, and it's a grave matter, and I would like to think that we can just take a bit of time. The time for medals, talk of medals, although I think medals are probably part of the incentivising of some of the alleged behaviours or other behaviour in the military we've all seen. People, the medals thing kind of drives behaviours. But there'll be a time for chat about medals, a time for chat about squadrons, and there'll be a time for chat about blame and leadership and political strategies. But I think the time now is just for a bit of silent reflection. That's the way I feel anyway. And there'll be a time for cricket too. So that's certainly been a healing process or something that can bring some healing, start the healing process.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see. It's like a spirit. Obviously, I can't, and we don't speak. I mean, we've been attacked, individually attacked. Like, why hasn't Swiss 8 spoken up about this? Like, well, we're not SAS, and we're a proactive mental health charity, not a fucking political narrative arm. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
but that's why
I really like that. And to be honest, no, there's been very, very little chat. This is probably the most vocal you'll hear from guys in the regiment or from the regiment. There's been a couple of follow-ups on LinkedIn, and they've been quite civil, but there's been no one from inside the unit that I'm aware of. Anyway, there might be something, but I think the unit realises that we just need to, just take a pause and have a reflect before there's anything. And to be honest, there's nothing to do except crack on, keep doing the brilliant work the unit's been doing, make some changes if required, and crack on. There's nothing else to do. Do good work,
mate. I absolutely hats off to you, and it feels like from the way it's been handled in the media that is the consensus from the boys in Perth, is to just keep your head down, pause for a minute, have a think about it. Don't. Because there's two ways to approach any kind of problem these days with social media, and that is someone says something bad about you, you take the bait, you go straight into a troll arguing match, you blow it out of proportion, and there's nothing gets resolved. It's just media hype, and that is the way that some people have handled it. And then there's the way where, I mean, in a nutshell, without trying to summarise everything you just said, it resonated a lot with me. The way your attitude is, take a pause, think about what we're doing. And then when we come back, let's focus on all the positives. Instead of trying to fight the one negative, focus on the hundreds of positives. And that for me, in a nutshell, is what the veteran space needs at the moment. Whether it's this inquiry or whether it's a suicide crisis or at the moment, everyone's answer is, whatever my problems are, it's the fucking government. Let's blame them and let's get on TV and blow up and it's all DVA. Instead of going, hang on a minute, there's a lot of positives in the veteran space. There's a lot of, when you leave the military, there's a massive amount of positives that come out of it. There's a lot of successful people. Let's focus on them instead of all the negatives from there. I think that's the way forward.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's really what brought us here today, having this podcast, because I think we are 100% aligned on the broken veteran narrative being now, well, not now, always, but it's that supporting that narrative is detrimental to the veterans coming through. And I think that I'd like to see more stories. The journalists are probably not going to tell too many. They want speculation and hyperbole, but I'd like to see, Adrian, to go to your point, I'd really like to see a lot more emphasis on the good stuff. 90% of veterans go on to have normal careers. They go normal lives. They get mortgages and family and all the trials and tribulations that go with that. And we need to be there for our brothers and sisters who are struggling. And we all do. So we know about this and we've seen it firsthand. But there's just so much good to tell. I see so many veterans out there because you're looking for them and they're kicking ass. And I went up to Canberra recently, not that I can't imagine going back to Canberra anytime soon, but they're just everywhere and they're doing awesome stuff, earning good money, living good lives. And we just don't seem to hear about it. But I'll leave that to others anyway.
Yeah. I don't know what the whole process behind, like you say one comment. So we sort of said a comment in Canberra. We're down there with the barbecue, remember, and we said, hey, look, what do you think about this report and what it's going to do? And we said one fucking thing. We're like, look, we just need to have a look for some people are dealing with shit, and it could have a large effect on people's mental health if they're dealing with shit. You're bringing it back up, or you're discrediting their service. Like it could be some sweeping, and then it just seems like the media grabs something and they run it, and they will fucking run it into the ground, and then they have to find someone to perpetuate that narrative, and you're like, fuck.
It's frustrating, and there's a few things I'd say about the kind of the support to veterans' health. One is we've got one of the best veteran support networks, resourcing, agencies and ESOs, etc., in the world. Full stop. There's probably more. I can't. Got no evidence for this, but per veteran capita, there's probably more money and resources to support. Now, that's not to say that it's perfect, and DVA does need a change. The government, I suppose, top-down approach probably needs to have more bottom-up approach. There's a whole bunch of things that need to, but we need, again, think about, there's lots out there. The ESO community's brilliant. I've got a work with a couple myself, and we work kind of squarely in education, but it's fragmented. It's all over the shop. We've got people working at cross purposes. I've never been one for centralisation, but I think that there's probably a need for in the future for some kind of central body to kind of just cohort everyone, not to tell people what to do, but say, oh, you're doing education. Well, here's 5 other people doing. Let's try and pool resource. I don't know. It seems a bit fragmented. But the mental health story is just too simplistic for me. It's such a complex thing. Some populations are super represented. No shit, frontline and infantry units or the frontline units, whilst others have lower prevalence and lower mental health issues beyond 12 months, because 12 months seems to be that it's quite obviously a sensitive time when you get out of the military. And there's so many complicating factors that it's unhelpful to pick out one part and then use that as the main stuff for any argument or any outrage as we kind of see. I've got this saying: I would like to see less welfare and more prepare, and so the organisation that I work with, that's inspiring some other stuff, starts the conversation early in the career. One day it's like we do with footballers here footballers in Australia, sports people in Australia. The conversation has to start very early in your career. One day you're going to be finished, either washed up like me at 36, or I've had a tough life, or an injury. An injury, an ACL, or yourself. You go away, you're deployed. You go on. Probably more injuries on training, but and your career's over, or whatever you were aspiring to. So that conversation needs to start earlier, and I think we could force a lot more of the resources upstream, deep into defence, into career, rather than waiting at ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. Put the ambulance at the top of the cliff, and a lot more preparation.
100%. I mean, that's our kind of focus as well. Like, we get as far upstream as possible. We should be delivering this training to guys as soon as they get off the bus at Kapuka. The issue we found with that is that no one wants to be the middle missed generation. So if you're going to go from where we are now, trying to grab people 10 years after they got out, and we go, all right, the model to fix it is to go get the new people as they're coming in at Kapuka, then everyone in that gap in the middle stresses out, and the politicians are like, oh, what about that block of people in the middle? And I'm like, there is things we can do for them, but sometimes you just got to say, fuck it, let's get it right upstream and then come back and address that.
Yeah, it goes a bit to what Mex said before about the resistance to change inside the unit when we were bringing the human performance program. So we did have a deliberate bottom, and this is a bit of the psychologist in me, I suppose. My master's is organisational psychology, so it's more focused on teams and performance. The clinical stuff kind of got a bit heavy. I remember walking out of a class one day and just go, fuck, I can't do that. So it's heavy enough I was still in the unit at that stage. And there's some really good constructs and really good models for change. And, the most basic one is it's got to be top down and bottom up. And what does that mean? It means that you do start. So, what we did at the regiment is beyond about 2012, I want to say, our Rio week, after guys had just come off selection, that week that we had with them, instead of them going off boozing for 10 days, which I didn't mind, but when I came through, we got them in and we started educating and saying, this is the way we do it. That's no options. If you want to join and stay with us, this is how we look after our bodies, our minds, our social networks. This is what we think and feel, and this is how we deal with that, and in a sports science kind of way and the research. And at the same time, you're chipping away at the top as well, the old fellas and the instructors, and trying to bring them. And it's never, ever going to go smooth. You're not going to flick a switch and everybody's on. But I would put my hand on my heart now and say that that change has taken 10 years, but it's pretty bloody close, a lot of those courses. So, yeah, I think that's what I'd say to the government. Of course, you can't capture those people in the middle, or can you? I don't know, but it's still not an excuse to have a plan and acquit it.
Yeah, because you do a lot of work in this space, because you're on you're the state manager for the Wandering Warriors as well, aren't you? And oceanic director of US Mission Critical Teams. What else you got? Victorian, you're Young Heroes RSL Victoria.
Yeah, so look, but they're things I've worked in. Yeah, I guess you just kind of flit around. Did a bit of work with Damo up on the Younger Heroes. That's a great initiative. They bring, if you've been away from your kids for a long time, they find a place so that the service person can come with their kids and just hang out in the bush, which I rate. I think nature. Who would have thought cruising around in the bush was good for you? There was plenty of time I thought, what the fuck am I doing here? I wish I was in a pub in town or something. But Damien Schofield, he does a bunch of work. I did a bunch of research for the RSL off the back of my master's in psych, and worked with the veterans, a lot of them out at Leongatha and Gippsland, which I loved. It was fantastic. And actually a real insight into what the local RSLs out in the country are doing with veterans. There's some great programs and really positive stuff and really uplifting. I was inspired, actually. I think it was, I'm not sure it was Wonthaggi or Leongatha. They had they paid for gym memberships for veterans, and they had dozens of veterans turning up to do gym together, getting off the grog, getting employment, supporting each other. And I think you might know I've written lots about everybody who leaves defence gets 2-year gym membership to any gym in Australia, full stop. And that it's just a grounding place to go. And these days people leaving defence are more attuned to the gym than they've ever been. Not everyone, but I think it's a start. And the mission critical team stuff in the US is working with military, police, fire, emergency responders and medical staff around similar topics and training and education as we're talking about today. So I just find, Mex, that now that I'm out, I feel like I want to give back even more. You want to help even more, and I think that's okay. I think it's nice. You just got to check yourself. You don't get sucked in too far and too hard. You need to power down. The same as when you're in.
No, because it's just that transition pace where you get out and you want to help and into those fucking amazing programs. I think it's really important that it's that purpose piece, isn't it? And even though that introspection to know that it's giving back and whether it's altruistic behavior or where it comes from, you still, that purpose piece is probably the piece that we sort of preach as well. Now, it used to be jobs. The government was all about giving people jobs. But if you work a shit job, you're still going to fucking...
That's right. Yeah. I know that.
Yeah.
Nick Baldwin works. He was in 1 hour with us. When he got out, he's got a good job now with PwC in Canberra. But when he got out, part of the transition jobs program was taking him, I think it was a full track in an infantry unit, get out, and they're like, all right, we've got your job interview at Woolworths stacking shelves, mate. He's like, what the fuck? That's correct. That's a job. That is not purpose. The purpose you have in the army is not going to be fulfilled by stacking shelves at Woolworths at midnight.
Certainly not using their strengths, no, that's for sure. And I think this is where that coord comes into it. The education, employment. But again, this conversation needs to start kind of way upstream. Rather, transition's too late. It's just simply that. I think it's as simple as that. Transition's too late, and we need to be having those discussions prior. And I think, generally speaking, Australia does a pretty good job. I think we're in danger here of saying, "Oh, it's all fucked" and everything. And look at it. For some people, it is. They're deep in it, and I've seen those people. I've held their hugged them while they've cried and all the rest of it. But there's still another story here, and I think, as they're coming through and out of transition, I would like the conversation to be not here's DVA and welfare, although that's important. Christ knows when I get older, I'll be asking for a bit more help from DVA, but it's not the whole. It's only a small part of the story. The bigger story is you have to keep going. You just got to keep getting up and keep going each day, and stop drinking, stop doing drugs. Get to the gym as regularly as you can, or get active, or do whatever. Stay engaged in the community, and I think it's just a transformation period. At the Mission Critical Team Institute, we call it this period of liminality. So you and the best way to have heard it described, Preston Klein describes it as the surf zone. So liminality is the period between a period in transformation, say in a human's life or anything. Transformation of anything, where you're not quite what you used to be and you're changing towards what you're going to be in the future. Selection, for example, in special ops or any form of selection is that. And the best way to describe it is that it's not quite it's the surf zone. You're not quite on the beach, you're not quite in the ocean, but you can feel the bottom and you can feel the water. You're kind of caught in between, and that you're being pulled, left and right and up and down. And so in transition, I think that's quite a bit what it's about. And during that time, I think, we've just got to help people through that period to get to what they're going to be in the future, and come rounding back to your point, Mex, is having a north point, having an aim point, having a purpose. And if you need to fake it till you make it with work with veterans or work with kids or work in community work, then so be it. Unfortunately, to the education piece, the hard news and the hard work is that you might have to do some shit work and some shit things, but fill your life with purpose during that period. I know this sounds sexy. I've known people who've gone to work for the Big Four or those types of companies, and it sounds great and the money's good, but they're just they soon realise that sitting in an office in front of a computer for 8 hours a day really sucks. And, but that's life. Unfortunately, that's the tough news for everyone, that when you come out, there's life, isn't a treat. There's no expectation or entitlement, but just adjust. But it will take time. And look, there's good blokes like all of us and good women out there to help if they need a hand.
Because I think you've been sort of quoted as saying that you think it takes about 10 years to transition fully from one transition.
Oh, there's no doubt. And, and look, for some people it won't. And I don't want to kind of make it about us and them or anything, but, officers are probably going to have an easier time, and we see less mental health representation or less prevalence. I'm not saying there's not. I'm just saying that's the statistics show. And they're educated, they've got pathways, and they generally come through fit for purpose. Which is why most of my effort, 99.9% of it, goes into us good guys. But that transition period doesn't matter whether you're an officer or an OR or where you come from. Coleman Ruiz and I were talking recently in another podcast, just waxing lyrical about it. But Coleman and I went to San Diego in 2015, I think it was, or was it 2017? And he and I were having a beer out the back, and I just left the regiment. I'd come to Melbourne and I was feeling a bit lost. There was this huge weight off me when I left the regiment. There was life outside. But about a week later, 2 weeks later, I felt scared and lost. Where's all my mates and who can I talk to and who are these bloody civvies? They're soft as, pensioners' turd. But I spoke to Coleman. I said, mate, how is it? He was a SEAL, Navy SEAL for 10 or 15 years. And I said, how was your transition? He'd been out for 5 or 6, and he said, oh, still going. He said, it hasn't stopped. And I said, what? And he goes, yeah, I don't think there's a transition point. And here I was thinking that you could kind of get out, have 6 or 12 months, and you'd be fine. And there was a bit of anxiety around that. And I think that's what happens with people. They kind of get locked into this anxiety and longing and looking backwards. But when he said that, mate, there was just a permission for me to take my time and take a deep breath and realise that what we found in some of the research, this concept of residue, that it stays with you, and just accepting that there will be a feeling and a belonging going forward that just will take time, a long, long time. It's almost like losing a loved one. I lost my mum when I was 16, 17, and it just never quite leaves you, but you got to learn to reframe it in a different way. And this is the power of psychologists. I haven't stopped seeing them, and I was onto them early. I was one of the very few people, and I think they're super powerful, or counsellors or mentors, whatever. You should always have them when you come from jobs like ours, where we've had extreme experiences, whether it's, and that's not even to talk about combat. That's talking about just extreme experiences of training and of what you're training for and the gravity of the job. You really need to work hard to process that, and I would encourage everybody to do that, to work really hard.
Because so talking about that, and this is the big thing, instructor credibility. Having a guy, Harry Moffit, 11 operational deployments, 2002 to 2013. You are the pit, so our demographic is predominantly we're open for everyone. It's tools for everybody, but the demographic that we get our statistics from all of our viewing platforms, and our demographic is what was it, Keegs? 25-year-old, and they're all all combat corps, all dudes. But the thing is, the instructor credibility and the piece saying, you get people who do the podcast, make it a bit tongue-in-cheek, have a laugh, talk in the language that we used to fucking talk in, wrap up a bit of mental health, but put people in front of the camera who...
You want a camera?
Who
I've got a good head for radio. I didn't know about that.
Who can attest and go, you're going to do transit. When you get out, it's not all doom and gloom, but this is a process. This is what I went through. And hearing your story and saying, it's all right, mate, because I know you're quite humble professionals, and getting you to talk about it is different. But, you guys are looked up to in the Army, and to get your story in front of people, and then it gives them that, like you were saying, it gives them that, what do you say, the reason, the okay to actually transition and feel.
Yeah. That's huge, and it's just simple permission. And it's not me giving anyone permission, it's people giving themselves permission. Mate, you're going to feel shit. It's going to be tough at times. Paying a mortgage off and having all that responsibility without the background and the security blanket of the military is tough. I still do. I still kind of at times really lament. I sit out the back with a beer and listen to the frogs croaking and lament. A great time. When I was writing the book, Keegan's dad, Matt Locke, he and I used to sit up on top of the King of Jordan's holiday home and watch all the Black Hawks fly over. And that was Black and Green Force, the Task Force Green and Black, the UK and the US guys going to do hits up in Sada City and elsewhere. And we used to sit there and reflect and gag and have a sneaky scotch or a beer or two and smoke a cigar or a cig, whatever was on offer for either, and have a just like marvel at where we found ourselves. And I sit out the back now, and I really lament though, or not lament. I'm nostalgic about those times. I wish I could do it all again, and particularly as I'm getting older. But back to reality, and I think this is they're the important conversations. It's okay to feel overwhelmed and a bit lost and whatnot when you first get out. We know that most of the mental health issues occur in the first 12 months or 18 months, so I hope that regardless of who you are, just having that permission to take your time in transition. It takes a while, it'll take a while. There's a few things I find some veterans have got out because they were angry, and that's probably an indicator, not a good indicator or an indicator for a poor outcome potentially, or they've got out through injury. And again, we see spikes in mental health in the first 12 or 24 months, people who have medically discharged, and they both make a lot of sense, doesn't it? So that's important information for us all to think about internally. What is the position I'm leaving the beach from? And also for all of us who are helping them, one of the first questions you might ask is interrogate and just find out what was their exit like. Were you pissed off with the military, or were you pissed off with yourself, or did you have a pleasant transition, or was it an injury? So, I'm kind of gabbling a bit here, but it is kind of complex. But permission's a huge thing. Giving yourself permission.
I only started listening, or got through listening to your book over the last couple of days. The chapter before that, the one where you're talking about Keegan's old man, the one before that was about Jimmy Molan. Still rate him?
At the time, I did. He was when you see the job he was doing inside the headquarters, it was pretty fucking impressive. And I don't know a man who slept less, apart from me. But look, I don't follow politics, so I if I do follow politics, it's purely as a sport. Not as a because I think they're all fucking off in their own heads, up their own bums, and I don't know what's going on sometimes. But look, I spent a fair bit of time with him, as did Matt, and I think we he had the odd sneaky scotch with us, and was an okay bloke. I don't have anything to bad. If I had to rate him in terms of generals and senior ranking O clubbers, I'd put him up there. He could swear and curse and drink and talk about AFL with the best of them. But he's a political beast now, isn't he? So he's a bit different.
I mean, the reason I asked, we did a barbie for a bunch of the pollies down in Canberra on Remembrance Day, and when Jim came down for the barbie, no shit, I thought it was like there was a digger there. Like, just hanging around the barbie, wanted to get like the 20-cent bangers, couldn't get enough of them. That's how generals normally react in front of the boys. He's just a dirty worth bloke.
So he's got short arms and long pockets, you reckon? He's come down for the free feed. It was a great time, and I just want to dwell on Matty Locke and that time, because it was surreal. We were driving around Baghdad. We were. This will sound bad, but I don't mean it this way. But we had the run of the city. We were kind of there was no one to report to other than Jim and his Adge and his assistant, Steve. I'll call him. But it was such a brilliant time, and I think I mentioned in the book, Lockie, that Matt was such a professional, and so were the other team leaders at the time, that it just works perfectly. And there's been a bit of criticism about why weren't the officers on the ground with the SAS. And look, no problems at all. They should be, in most cases are. So it's a bit of a fallacy, this bullshit about there weren't any. But the regiment works like that. Two blokes in Baghdad, you can't, that you have to be trusted to do that work. And I can promise you that all of my experience has been of the utmost professionalism. And the thing I loved about Lockie is he was up for a cheeky beer, but he'd always say, we'll wait till 5 o'clock, And I'm like, it's 1:45. Nah, it was just wait until the handover's done and then,
not Chinese eyes.
Yeah, but professional, and larrikin at the same time.
I specifically remember him coming back from that trip about double the size he went. He was that jacked. He came back jacked. A lot of gym time over there.
Fuck yeah. So there was a gym just across town, not too far from where we were, and it was a good quality gym too. I spent a fair bit of time in there, but he was there crack of dawn every morning in the gym. Yeah, he really smashed it, and he came back pretty buff.
Yeah, quote from Mum was that he came back looking like a cane toad because his shoulders got so big. I remember he came through and I was like, yeah, I'm not going to be a bad kid for a few months.
Typical bloody water operator, mate. That was it. They loved it. Yeah,
I've actually got the I brought the brick because I'm at Mum's house at the moment. I went and tracked down my brick. The tile. That one there.
Yeah, mate. I mentioned that's right. I'll get my wife to bring mine in, but or I'll go and grab it just before we finish up. Yeah,
it's pretty funny that I got the Afghan one as well from that first trip.
Yeah, same. So because Lockie was actually on the ground that went up there. So I had some questions saying, "Oh, you went up to Osama's place," and I didn't go up. They went down there. Probably shouldn't say that. Can you edit that out?
Edited it out.
Yeah. Couple of those blokes, they were the ones that went down there, and they just brought them back and said, "Oh, we were just Johnnies on the spot." And I'll ask the wife to bring the brick in.
So the story is the boys just missed him. Hey,
say again, mate.
The story was that the boys just missed Bin Laden? Was that when they just missed him in the cave?
Yeah, he was around there. That was my understanding. And that's in 2002. That was pretty much our job, was to support the US hunt, and it kind of goes to the evolution of the unit over that period. We were world renowned for SR patrols in the hills alone for weeks on end, and pretty self sufficient. Even to fight the enemy on contact, and sustain ourselves. So the coalition forces who would bring in Rangers or Marines or the strike units, the Tier 1 strike units, they loved having us in the hills and supporting them because we could follow up and help them with the actions as well, with the kinetic actions. So at that time, Bin Laden was supposed to be up around Tora Bora and Ali Keel, and they were bombing the fuck out of the caves, trying to drill through and collapse them, I guess, or just scare him off. The hunt was on, and in our minds, I think everybody that was it, And I think it had great purpose and great strategy at that end of the war, at the beginning, and we were being used properly too, in that we were part of Operation Enduring Freedom. We were part of the US Special Operations war, not part of more conventional war. So, but in terms of just missing him, my understanding, and I'll be happy to be corrected on this, is that he moved from Ali Keel or Tora Bora into the federated areas of northern Pakistan, and it's even harder to get into Waziristan or whatever it's called. And then he ultimately ended up not far from there over where was it in the end? It wasn't Asadabad, but Abbottabad or something, or Abbotsabad or something. Yeah, Abbott, something bad. Cricket bad.
So that brick is from his. I mean, that was his hangout. That was his jazz.
Yeah, some of these caves had medical facility, rudimentary, but medical facilities and places for respite and quite homely, I guess. And around the fronts of these caves, and this one in particular that was bombed by the Americans. Stand by. You got it? So this is it. Yeah, Lockie, this is the bottom of it there. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah. Beautiful. Just so we got, there you go. I'm pretty stoked about that. That's awesome, mate.
Yeah, the story is pretty funny. I was listening to the book the other day about the story. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, absolutely. But to finish off on it, yeah. So what was I going to say? It doesn't matter. But to go to the story about the brick over the headquarters there. Yeah, we watched that brick. Your dad and I watched that brick for weeks and weeks, and we talked. That'd be a nice brick to put alongside the Osama brick, and we had this is highly confidential, okay, just between us three, us four. But we had a couple of beers, and we thought, oh, we'll go and only one or two, and we'll go and get this brick. And we got up on top, and we brought some ropes, but we'd forgot carabiners and somewhere to tie. There was nowhere to tie off, and we was just a complete debacle, to be honest. And your old man, he's much braver than I, said, "Oh, I'll climb down the face," and it was sheer, It was brick. And he said, "Harry, you just hold on to the rope." And I said, "Mate, you weigh about $1.50." He was massive, all muscle. And I said, "Nah, look, mate, we'll let's retire for the night, and we'll get it." And then, as it turned out, there's bombs going off every AM and PM, big bangs around Baghdad at that stage. It was the peak of the suicide bombing campaign, and rockets and whatnot, and it fell off of its own volition. And we drove through one morning, found it in the bush, and that was it. Yeah,
got pillaged.
Yeah,
liberated.
Really memorable. Like I said, mate, it was such a memorable trip, that one, because we were probably not in high peril all the time, although we had a few near misses. We got suicide bombers. You'd see them occasionally driving up and down the freeway, and a couple of them cracked off in front of us. I think there's a picture in the book, maybe. Right in front of us, they cracked off. We were sitting in the car wash one day, and a few mortars landed like 20 or 30 metres behind us. And I said to Locke, "What are we going to do?" And he goes, "Just stay here." Like just casual as you like. I think he was reading the paper at the time.
You're saying a suicide bomber cracked off in front as you as the target, or as just someone else, and you were like, "Fuck, that was close"?
No, so it was it was close, mate. And so we're just pulling into the BIAP, into the Baghdad International Airport, and there's a little line up as you come through, and we got access straight through. And as we pulled up and slowed down to come through the checkpoint, two cars just came up the side, and one blew up about 50 metres to our half left. If that, and the other one drove straight into the civilian contractors who were all coming onto the base to do cleaning, whatever, and cracked off and killed. I can't only imagine, a dozen people, and there was, lots of people wounded and whatnot. It was, it was pretty close. I mean, if we had been another, you don't know, we were in an up armoured car, which is good and bad. But if we had been another 50 metres up, we certainly would have got blasted. The up armoured cars, if the car breaks down and the computer's shut down from the blast, then you can't get out, and a lot of those cars used to catch on fire. So that was always a risk for us. But yeah, generally we were pretty safe.
Yeah, I think I remember watching the video that Dad brought back from there, and then the story in the book that you tell about the I think it was a civvy contractor vehicle that got blown off the side of the bridge.
Yep.
And then burnt. He showed it. I think I saw the photo. He took a photo of the crater that it left in the.
Yeah, it's in one of the videos. I think we drive past it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's that Route Irish was a daily reminder of your cars and contractors who got whacked every day. I mean, I wouldn't have done that job for $1 million. So we went and saw a few of them, and it was a pretty tough life for a few extra guilders. But that one, the suicide bomber pulled up beside them and blew them off the bridge, and they burned live inside the car because they couldn't get out. And I think that was common, as much as much there was when it happened, it was bad.
I think what you said earlier, you said it's the worst time to have released the book. I personally think it's probably the best time you could have released the book. Not as in a sense for advertising and marketing, but I think a lot of boys will read it, and it's a good thing for them. I think you capture a lot of what actual SAS guys are like the humility, like growing up with the boys. Obviously, I know what they're like, and I think you capture that really well in the book. And I think a lot of Australians will read it and get a good side of what the boys are like.
I appreciate that, Lockie, because just to bring the book out, I wrote the book in 2015. I went to England for 10 weeks to a village called Wargrave in the Thames Valley, and all I did is I took my journals, they're just in a box here, 2 big boxes of journals I kept. I was a mad journaler, always have been, and I took. I photocopied most of them and took the pages with me and just wrote wrote and wrote and wrote. And it wasn't really to write a book per se. I just thought in my own mind that I'm leaving the unit. This is a massive inflection point, whether I like it or not, because life isn't, shit just happens. Stress happens to us as well as from within us. And I knew that it would be a tough time. And I thought the best way I can kind of reconcile the past is go and write about it. And I encourage all of you and anyone listening and all of your mates to go and do the same thing. Writing is such a powerful way. One of the problems with mental health, I think, is that thinking and the mind is so confusing. We've got no idea what's happening between how we're talking and thinking and our mind. We really don't. We think we've got this structured language and linguistics coming. We just got no clue. No one knows what's happening in the mind. And so a lot of the kind of negative thoughts and things that kind of give us anxiety or stress or make things worse than what they are. It's the confusion around where all that comes from. And I knew that at that time there'd be a lot of that. I journaled it all, wrote about 150,000 words, and then came back and I had a discussion with a cricket writer of all, Malcolm Knox, and then met Tom Gilliatt, and they both said, you should definitely tell this story. We'll help you. We'll be respectful to the unit, because I was really afraid they'd kind of tear off and have this tell-all story, which I didn't want it to be. But we decided last year that we release it in October, planning on a July release of the report. We knew it was coming out. But fuck me, who could have picked in the same week? And when I found out it was coming out, because the whispers started in early October on our back channels, and I don't think I slept for like 2 weeks, just thinking, fuck. And I was on to Tom going, mate, can we cancel? He goes, we can't, it's coming out. We've paid all this money and you've signed a contract. And I'm just going, fuck. Anyway, my wife just said to me, it is what it is. Let it go, and kind of comforted me, but it was very difficult. But having said all that, maybe it is what it is, and maybe it is the right time. I don't know. Time will tell. But it's not a tell-all. I'm not giving away any secrets, and I hope it's taken for what it is. It's just a bloke and a few bats having a few beers and cracking through life. I hope that's it.
Mate, the way the world is at the moment is separated into divide and polarised as it is. The hardline lefties that believe everything they would see in the news without doing any research, they would never be quiet anyway. But the guys on the centre right, mate, now I think it's the perfect time. And I'm going through it, there's a lot of military dudes out there that have written books that they're like, I can see you had a story to tell, but book writing skills aren't that good. This is a fucking sick.
Thanks, mate.
I listen to audiobooks when I'm driving. Normally I do a podcast for an hour and then turn it off for a bit and then something else. This is one of those ones. It was this, and I hate to say it, but David Goggins did it to me as well. I don't like David Goggins that much, but his book was your book. I'll put on, mate, while I'm driving, and if I'm driving for 10 hours, I'll listen to it for 10 hours. It's entertaining. It's good.
Oh, mate! Look, I absolutely appreciate it, and from all of you, and it seriously, sincerely gives me great comfort, because I guess if you haven't got your reputation or whatever that is, you've not got much as a soldier. It really is, and I was super worried about it, so it gives me comfort. So thank you. And coming from young hard chargers too, it means a lot, because that's what I want to spend the rest of my life doing, is helping out young men and women coming through, if I can, or wherever I can. That's it.
Because it's cricket, right? Centered. It's weird. It's a cricket book. It's a personal. I can't pigeonhole it. I absolutely can't pigeonhole it. But the stories about, because cricket's obviously massive in your life. I have been told that you're a terrible batsman but you're not a bad bowler. So
spot on. Yeah, no. So my cricket mates reckon I should have called it Bats 11. I always batted at 11.
Batting average.
Look, yeah, and so I guess that goes to the central point of why I was inspired to kind of get the book out. So I've got this unique collection of cricket bats, 11 bats, and each one of them's from a deployment. It just worked out that way. It certainly wasn't by design. And on each of those bats are all the signatures of the men and women I serve with on combat operations, on program operations, and other things that we did across the time. Lockie's on there, must be 3 or 4 times right from the early days. So those bats kind of got them out of the garage one day when we were coming over from Perth to Melbourne, and over a beer, my mate kind of planted the seed saying, it was a pretty remarkable kind of set and what they meant. So I got to Melbourne, I met someone and told them about that. We'd had a discussion about it. And long story short, they ended up at the Shrine of Remembrance on an exhibition. And I walked into the exhibition. I was just blown away. It was this beautiful, well curated story was told and everything. And when I saw them up there, it kind of gave me a bit of a tingle. And they spent 12 months there in the short term exhibition area, and that's where I started to get a bit of interest, and that's kind of where this journey started around having written this massive journal and these what ended up being about 75 different stories of about 3,000 to 5,000 words each. That's where the discussion started about, do you want to tell the story about the bats? And so that, I think it's a nice way to have the chapters, the bats. I think it kind of makes sense. Malcolm Knox, who was the editor in the end, who helped me through what book writing was. I had no fucking clue how to write a book. But I've got to tell you, I loved the experience, and I don't think I'm bad at telling a yarn, and I've learned a lot. I've done a lot of academic writing, but I enjoyed it and I hope to do more. But what I really like, I'll tell you what's nice, and going back to Adrian's kind words before, which kind of is very humbling, is I get texts on LinkedIn or messages on LinkedIn or whatever, and people randomly just write, and they say, "Oh, enjoying the book," or whatever. They say, on bat 4, I'm on bat 8, rather than chapter this or up to this page or anything like that. Just getting through bat, the bat 4, and I love the way they kind of refer to it as a bat. So it's a lovely way to kind of posit the book and frame it.
Has the externals been getting heaps more attention now that the book's on?
No, our two fans of hang around, but I think they might be a bit strange.
I must be one of them. I got Spotify does your top 20 songs for the year.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, the externals came in there a few times, so it was good.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, we're still going. We're recording at the moment. Actually, we recorded here in North Melbourne, and we've got a little studio room down in St Kilda that we do pre-production on. But we're probably about, I'd say, a quarter of the way through the record, proper studio recording, and I think we can maybe have it out, realistically for February or March next year. So we've called it vertical consumption at this stage. We'll get someone drinking beer through a COVID mask or something on the front cover, and that's there. Look, mate, I talked about cricket and I talked about having something else outside of the regiment. I think cricket and the band kept me grounded. Civilians, after they hear about you're a soldier or whatever, they get past that, and there's a substantive kind of discussion to have, and they keep you grounded. So the band's played a massive role in keeping me sane and together along the journey. Going back, your old man and most of his mates were up the front with their shirts off doing push-ups. That's why we don't have many fans, because they'd come along and they'd see these freaks doing half semi-naked push-ups on the floor, pouring beer over each other, and they'd all leave.
Because you played in Big Day Out, didn't you? 97.
Yeah.
While you were all still serving.
Yeah, we did. And I don't know whether you remember a band called Prodigy.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were pretty big. They were pretty massive. And we were in the green room, and we used to carry a fridge around full of VB tins, right? It was a gutted fridge, and it was a 6-man lift when it was full. And so we rock into the green room, plonk down this fridge. It had about 6 or 7 cartons of VB in it. And we're getting ready to, that was our prep for the gig. And all these, I dare not say it, but all these kind of hippie looking dudes are all coming in with stuff. And we thought they were the roadies. They got earrings through their nose and nose rings through their ears and all this type of stuff. And that's cool. I'm not having a go, but we thought they were roadies, and so we were just sitting in the middle dominating. There's about 10 of us, including a few boys. And we're going, just chuck it over there, mate. And they all went outside. They couldn't get into the fridges because we were in front of everything. We were just a bit rude and arrogant, I thought. But we just thought they were the roadies dropping shit off. And it turned out to be the band. And they were fucking pissed off at us. We left it all there, went up and played. We took smoke grenades up on stage. This is what you probably get in trouble for telling you this. But and we just left the place in an absolute mess and got drunk as 10 men would, and it was that was good. It was probably peak externals, I think. Yeah.
To go, because you got sponsored by VB and Barocca, didn't you? Did you get a sponsorship? Is that true?
Yeah, partly true. So the Swanbourne Hotel sponsored us with VB.
Oh, it's gold.
And the local chemist sponsored us with Barocca. So so partly true. But we didn't actually have a written contract with Barocca and VB. Although CUB, we did have a deal locally in WA with 2 cartons of VB each gig, as long as we displayed them proudly. So one of my jobs as a singer, because I did stuff all, I was just the roadie for the band and carry heavy stuff, and I was the beer baron. So if you're in the band and you yell out "beer baron" loud, that means I've got to double away, drop what I'm doing, grab a beer, and bring you the beer, which is proper. But I used to make it my business to go on stage before we played and put at least a dozen cans, in the positions on the guitar amps and drum riser and whatnot. So I'll tell you what, VB got their worth out of us, that's for sure. Still do.
Might have to hit him up for a proper sponsorship now.
Yeah, I don't know how that'd go, but
because I was the journal stuff. I just wanted to go back and speak about. This has happened a lot in our demographic of people about the journals. People remember things differently, and then they can, as they go through an experience that happened. We spoke about this a couple of times with the bicycle photo when you're a kid. But people, it's 10 years ago since I last deployed, and you get on the piss and everyone has a few beers and someone will tell a story and you're like, bro, that fucking definitely didn't happen like that. But they fucking believe it. They're like, yes, fucking 100% it did. And I think having a journal or fucking finding a way of notating what happened at that time, you can go back and read it as to how it fucking was. Yes, subjectively to your perception of the world. But you can go back in 10 years' time and you haven't, because it's not saying that people are making stories up, but they just remember things differently. And that memory then becomes part of who they are, right?
Yeah, definitely. Journaling's, I think, a superpower if you can train yourself to do it. And it doesn't even need to be reams of writing, pages. It can be bullet points. And you don't have to do it every day, and I'm not sure that is particularly helpful. But I think, as I was alluding to, I'm really into kind of linguistics at the moment, just reading on a bunch of, the cognitive revolution of the mid-last century. A lot of great thinkers come out of there and started to evolve the conversation about mind and body and what is mind. And I think one thing I've learned since, because I kind of did it naturally. I don't know where I got the journaling from. My mum was a bit of a reflector and kept her journal, but I always thought it was a bit of a teenagers thing, where the stereotypical teenage girl keeping a journal, dear diary type of thing. But I don't know. It just, again, I think that 1980 SAS on television really impacted me. It was around that time that I started to do it. But going back to the mind, I think we know this. This. Reading, writing, and thinking. This triad of being able to structure events and lower the dissonance between what happened and what didn't, because we know humans are quite unreliable at recalling the past, the reality of the past. They can recall their own. And so what often happens, and particularly in extreme experiences or traumatic, so-called experiences, is that we are so overwhelmed with stress or arousal or fright or fear at the time is we don't see everything that's going on. We know we have auditory occlusion, we have our senses dull, and sight, feel, etc. And so we only see a small window or a narrow focus or a zoomed in focus or aspect of what's going on. And I think what happens with journaling is it allows you to lay it out, have it down, you can confirm in your own mind that it's captured. You don't have to kind of think about it and store it in the memory banks. And then you can start to unpack it at another level. And I found writing the book, I was actually, it got to a point where there's so much information starting to perkle up out of the journals and everything, and remembering times you start to think, fuck, did that really happen, or was that another time? And so that memory reconsolidation is, I think that's the kind of focus, or that's the kind of function that it plays, journaling. And also journaling allows you to reconcile with yourself. If you're feeling guilt or shame about not doing something or feeling, men feel a lot of shame for being weak or not or for displaying weakness. I think journaling kind of helps you to reconcile those types of feelings. And certainly for me, it was a really cathartic experience. And I think it's not for everyone. And it takes practice to get good at it and to start to realize the benefits of it. But I personally have found it really beneficial. And, the ancients, the Stoics and the other schools of philosophy all talk about journaling as a really positive thing. Aurelius didn't mean to release the Contemplations and the other books that he wrote, and the Meditations, per se. They were just thoughts that he collected along the way, and there's some pretty powerful thoughts in amongst all of those. If you haven't read any of his stuff.
Yeah, that's going to take me in, because I mean, philosophy and stuff. Me and Sutter and Keegs, we get on the piss and we fucking figure out the world's problems and become the world's greatest philosophers. Obviously,
yeah, of course.
But it's something that we've always been fucking pretty into. But what is it for the listeners and everything? Do you have what's the Moff's bloody reading list, the recommended reading list, or what are you reading now that you're like, fuck, you've got to get this in your heads?
So it's a difficult one because of my taste, but I love my go-to book at the moment from a philosophy point of view is Nassim Taleb's Anti-Fragile. I think he's controversial and a bit divisive. He doesn't come from a background that I necessarily gravitate to, Wall Street banker of sorts, but I think he's a great modern philosopher. And that book, you can open that anywhere and start diving in and get a great sense of modern philosophy, if you like. A catch-all, and then I'm trying to think of modern kind of. I mean, if you want to go back to Aurelius or Epictetus or Hume or who else, Nietzsche or any of the classic philosophers from the classical period or back in the Greek period or Roman periods. There's plenty on those out there, but they're very difficult to read. And I find sometimes I'll read one translation and it doesn't necessarily marry up with the modern another translation. So Aurelius is great. I've got there's a good book here by Ryan Holiday, I think it is. The obstacle is the way. He captures a lot of the Stoic and Aurelius's philosophies. But going to the modern ones, also like there's that book Why Die by Percy Cerutty. I think it kind of tells a bit of a story about why philosophy is important for athletes. What else have I got over here? Probably not a lot at the moment. I'm into Noam Chomsky at the moment. As I said, I'm into linguistics and the mind and a bit of Descartes. I read online a bit of Descartes and a bit of Kant as well. They kind of push around the mind dualism and the mind body kind of. David Brooks wrote a great book. I think it's called. What is it called? David Brooks, the is it the character? It's something on character. Just escaped my mind for the moment. He writes about this notion of Adam 1 and Adam 2, the dualism of man, but women as well. We have this resume appreciation of ourselves. So if you write your resume, you write all the things you're good at and sell yourself and talk yourself up. But then you have this eulogy part of yourself as well. What do you want people to say about you at your eulogy? And they're in contest all the time for all of us. And I think there's some, and he captures a bunch of philosophers and philosophies that underpin that kind of that type of dualism, that the Adam 1 and the Adam 2 within all of us. I love that. That's The Road to Character, I think it's called. And the last one is Alain de Botton, who is my favourite. He's quirky. He's this nude, this bald professor out of the UK or Europe, and he's got his Consolations, I think it's called, the Consolations, and he catches Montaigne, Seneca, a whole bunch of philosophers, but just nice and concisely, and puts them into a modern kind of parlance. So that they would be the books that I would go back to. There's one book that I keep going back to all the time, and that's Origin of Species by Charles Darwin. If you haven't read that, that is a must read for everyone. It tells you about organizational culture. It tells you about evolution, why it's shit and why it's right and why it's wrong, and how there's this notion that you change gradually and man's changed gradually over time, but it's not right. It's kind of changed a little bit, but then it's had huge surges of change really quickly, and then it kind of balanced out for us. So I think that is a must read, and there's just philosophy in every corner of that book. I've got that twice now. I've read it to death. The pages are falling out, and I've got another small copy. Origin of Species. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. There's so many. This is one I read back and forth again too. This is I Was Only 16 by Roland Griffiths Marsh. That's the best war adventure book I've read ever. I'm still I think I'm probably through it for the 30th time. Look, if you get onto good books that really resonate with you, I'm not talking, don't worry about my rubbish compared to this kind of stuff. They're worth reading again and again, because you just discover gems and are reminded of gems each time you flick through it. And his is a great story. I think some of my writing style, if I can be so bold and out there to say I've got any style whatsoever, probably comes from this book and another book called Papillon by Henri Charrière. I'm not sure if you've heard of Papillon, the book, mate. Again, just absolute must reads. They're beautifully written and the ultimate adventure,
Fuck, that's gonna about 6 months. Fuck off, mate. Like 2 years of reading for me.
I know. I feel like I was on a podcast with Coleman the other week in the US, and he's rattling off all these books. I'm going, fuck, I thought I just got up to speed with everything, and then he's going this one and that. The hero's journey is the next one I'll probably crack out at the recommendation of a good mate of mine, Preston Klein.
Fuck. Yep. Well, we're gonna list all them in the comments, and then I'm gonna start trying to crack through it. I think it's something that I always, you always say you're gonna do it, but you need that point to step off the precipice and go, I'm fucking doing it. So
Audible changed that for me, mate.
Audible,
yeah. I'm just starting to learn Audible. It's hard to go from being the old school to the new school, but I'm getting used to it. It's a good way to spend your car journeys and train journeys.
Great at the gym. I saw a dude yesterday on the treadmill holding an actual book, and I was like, "What the fuck?"
He's just bullshitting.
Still speed walking, just reading a book, and I was like, "All right,
you're doing one of those things fucking wrong, if not both." I think
showing off.
That is I didn't know where to pick up chicks, mate. That is the only reason you bought a book.
Let's go.
So what's your because it's about showcasing individuals who are high performing and have achieved post service as well. Just some of the workouts that we do, some of your favorite workouts that what do you train? Are you powerlifting? Are you a runner? What's your jam when you're going?
Yeah, smarter, I think, is what I am these days. So running's only on grass, and so I'm at the footy oval. So I'm at the footy oval twice a week, and I'll run hard sprints, kick and run. I do a lot of, that's where I do a lot of leg work there, just body weight leg work. I'll lift heavy twice a week, and when I say lift heavy, I'm 53 now, so I used to probably lifting 1.5, 1.8, and probably pulling back the ego now. I'm down around 1.2, 1.3, but it does, because it takes so much longer to recover, and the shoulders and back aren't what they used to be. I've given up push-ups pretty much all up. I've given up chin-ups pretty much all up. And they were two of my staples for so many years, but they just train a lot smarter. Do a fair bit of lower body as well in the gym. But probably I don't train every day like I used to. I sauna 3-4 times a week. I think the research on that's pretty good. There's a beautiful series of podcasts and research, and it's for everyone. So that her name's Rhonda Patrick, and she talks about she can talk to mugs like me and explain it really simply. But she's also some brainiac scientist who's got all the research if you want to go picking through it. And she also talks about fasting. So I'm a faster. One of the best things I did was listen to an old bloke when he said, he said the best thing you can do when you give up the tools is drop all the weight and just keep fit and strong. And I went from 85, and I'm probably now about 75, 77 most of the time. And I feel so much better. I feel better, sleep better. But again, I wouldn't be just going off fasting on Harry Moffitt's recommendation. Go and see a doctor and make sure you because if you've got high or low blood glucose and high or low blood pressure, saunas or fasting might be detrimental. So you've just got to be careful on that. But they're two things that I probably have introduced that I feel much better. I can still chin 15 and run 5Ks in 20 minutes, and I think I would say that that's pretty reasonable, and that I've done that's through dropping weight and just being a bit more mindful about recovery and letting go of the ego. That's probably it, because it does take a bit of ego to look yourself in the mirror and go, oh, I'm a bit skinnier than I used to be, or whatever. I know there's a few nodding heads somewhere out there who that but it's you guys know it's just, and I want to reiterate the Swiss 8 message, that it's critical. It's just there's no other way to put it. To even if you're not training, just keep up the routine of. Not even if you're not training hard or lifting heavy or whatever, just keeping up the routine and the mindset of getting up, going to the gym or going for a workout, and putting effort into your body, because we perfect what we practice. And if we sit around drinking piss all day and laying on the couch watching movies, and you'll just get really good at it, and that's we know how that ends.
Fuck, that is we're going to clip the fuck out of that, mate. That will be.
Oh, right.
Yeah, that's spot on.
What's that mean?
No, that'll be a bite. We'll punch that through socials, mate. If you sit on the couch and watch movies, you'll be fucking good at it. Yeah.
No, it's just true, isn't it?
Yeah. No, mate. I think we could honestly do another 4 episodes to try and deep dive into fucking Harry Moffit, mate. But it was great coming on the show, mate. And
thanks, mate.
I hope we can sort of do some work together in the future, and just stay connected, mate. Because what you're doing and being qualified in the field you're in is fucking spot on for what the world's going through right now as well.
Yeah, but I'd love to, and as I said before, it's not a throwaway line. I'm really keen to stay connected to the next generation of charges coming through. And in my mind, it doesn't matter whether they're bloody SAS infantry or just civvy vets, all the rest of it. We've got, all of us collectively have got some hard work ahead of us, because there's a piece of work by Gene Twenge out of the States showing that the resilience that we've taken for granted in our soldiers and just in our population is that we can't rely on that anymore. And, society and social media and other things are conspiring to break down the resilience in certain populations and the emerging populations, younger generations, and I think that's emerging pretty quickly as factual now. We can point to some pretty solid science. So we all have a bit of a duty of care in a way, or a bit of a responsibility to keep up things like ramming the message home about sleep, nutrition and exercise and getting around each other. So I'd love to stay connected, mate. Love to lean into what you guys are doing and what others are doing too. There's a great deal of work, and and inspire some of the veterans who are sitting at home and sitting on the couch and drinking too much and taking drugs, whatever. A lot of us have been there and we've hit the bottom, but there's only one way out, and that's through the front door and out onto the street into your car or down to the gym or down to a mate's or make a phone call. That's the first step, and then that's what I'm here to help. So look forward to it.
Yeah, well, we got the Matthew Lock Cup. 27th of February. If your social calendar's free, mate, we're going to go on. Swiss Eight's going to helping Deb sort of tie in some extra bits to it. So
I haven't got up there yet. And every year, so Flick, certainly put the acid on me. And I know Matt Stevens gets up there pretty regularly, the bass player of the Externals. So he's always on to me about it. And same guys. We're at we've started up this cricket match on the 23rd of. For the 23rd of January this next year, if you're around Sydney or Rushcutters Bay, I think it is, Reg Bartley Oval, where Steve Waugh made his first class ton for New South Wales. Beautiful little ground. We're doing something similar there, but yeah, please put the acid on me for that February 23. And all things being equal, mate, I'd love to come up.
Yeah, be good. I mean, old Jim Molden comes up, so. It's a bit,
Does he?
Yeah, he gets up there for a bit.
Gut punch that bloke. Yeah.
Actually,
straight up.
I heard you might have punched a former PM on the show. Is that?
Yeah, that was at Dono's investiture. Yeah, that was crud. He wasn't too happy. I hit him hard too. I've only got small caliber arms, but they're a sustained rate of high accurate fire.
Mate,
no, rip it back.
I'm based in Coogee, Maroubra, but Coogee, yeah. So that cricket game, definitely get some boys there.
Yeah, come down. It's a ripper day, and I think it's, again, just I suppose going back to where we started, but with everything that's going on at the moment for everyone, this impacts everyone. It's just we got the healing process needs to start, soon enough. And for me, what better way than a game of cricket or sport, full stop, game of rugby or going for a surf or whatever to do that, because it's positive and uplifting. And Adrian, if at least we'll catch up for a beer. Yeah. Where are you at, Lockie?
I'm back at Perth now. I was in the Goldie for a while.
Yeah, I thought you were up at. Yeah, I was going to say I thought you were up in Queensland.
Yeah, I was scooted back over now, on the good side of the planet, on the good side of Australia.
Freedom.
Yeah.
Lucky bastard, yeah. And Max, where are you at?
Up in Darwin. So, yeah.
Oh,
we're
lovely.
The fucking eyeballs are swimming in the fucking humidity, bud.
Is that right? Yeah, well, it does get pretty tough. But again, it's a great place to be during COVID this year.
Yeah, absolute freedom. We were like, what COVID? So,
yeah.
It's good.
It's been menacing down here in Melbourne. It's been tough, I've got to say. Even I was starting to go a bit stir crazy at the end and get a bit of cabin fever, but we're pretty comfortable here, so we're not too bad.
Fucking magic, mate. Yeah, I think we'll wrap it up there and we'll roll it out.
Thanks, guys. Hey, keep up the great work too. I'm increasingly tracking what you guys are doing, and I'm getting better at social media, and love to marry up. If there's any way I can help, let me know. And same here. And if you're ever in Melbourne, please let us know. I'll take you out. Got a couple of pubs and a little club that I'm down in. We'll go and have some beers together, and look forward to that.
No worries. Okay. Cheers, mate. Thanks,
Muff.
All right, take it easy, guys.